So we're going to go ahead and record these so that we'll share with Avertech, because if anybody is not able to attend, then they may be able to watch after, as well as if there's things you may want to go back and revisit, you could do that as well. So that's our goal. We've got a few folks coming in. So I'll just do a quick introduction. I'm Lenore Curall. I'm the program director for the United Home Nation VR program here in Louisiana. I am by no means, I will say, an expert in grant writing. I just probably have a little more experience than some folks. I do the bulk of the grant writing for our tribe and have for a number of years pre-voc rehab. And I have written, let me think how many versions of ours, four of our grant applications. So probably a little more comfortable than somebody that's doing it for the first time, but it's also the opportunity that we have a chance to do some peer support in going through this and helping folks navigate through this, especially if you're a newbie doing this for the first time. It can be really scary, very intimidating. And we do it once every 5 years. So sometimes we forget some of these processes and that kind of stuff. And so I'm going to jump in and share my screen. Each week, I want us to kind of focus on some different elements to be able to work on. And I am I'm trying to get my computer to comply with me here to share one of my screens. Okay, that's exactly what to do. The first is for everybody to understand what and how your submission would go through. And so part of that is getting familiar with the grants.gov website. Is everybody able to see my screen? Okay, great. They have done some retooling in the last couple years with their site to actually make it a little bit more user friendly. One of the things is your grant gets submitted through this portal. It's important to note that every entity has what they call an AOR, which is the authorized organizational representative, who has the authority to actually submit grants on your behalf. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my account. And so grants.gov now uses login.gov. And so if you're not set up and that kind of stuff, you want to do that sooner than later. The biggest thing I will say is find out who within your tribe or your consortia that actually manages the sites and can do submissions, because they need to help walk you through this process and what and how they expect this to be done. So if you haven't done that, that's like first order of business. So different programs, it will do things differently, and so not everybody works the same. But if you want to find the AIVRS grant, the easiest way is to do a general search. So we'll just do American Indian vocational rehabilitation. And it pops up as our first choice right here, 84.250Q. And we're able to open that. Let me let some folks in. And then this is what you'll get. So you can actually see the grant announcement as it looks like in grants.gov. The eligibility, it goes general overviews and those kinds of things. But the biggest place you get started is, and I've got to move the screen out of the way, is to apply. And so that's the question of whoever your AOR is, they may want to establish and create this initially, or they may say it's okay for you to do it and then they get logged in. You need to work that out. There has to be an application filing name. So I'll just put United Culmination, vocational rehabilitation. We are in year 3, so thankfully I will tell you I'm not in this grant cycle. Otherwise I would be feverishly working like many of you. And then you're going to create workspace, and that is I would say fairly new for anyone who did not use this in the past, have used this in the past. The workspace is still kind of getting fine-tuned. And so what workspace allows, and this is where your AOR may work with you, is that you can add more people to get access to be able to do entries.
Cool.
So if I were going to add, I'm going to add my assistant Katina. So I'm just going to say Katina. But Katina also has to have an account in grants.gov, so it's going to say it doesn't find her, so they have to have set up. But if you have an account, because any individual can have an account, but if your AOR sets it up, they can give you access to do data entry in here as well. So that's where there can be multiple people who get access to the portal. It's been a nice change in the system because it definitely allows for a lot more versatility in the submission from before. Now, each of these, you'll see all of these things are listed as mandatory, mandatory, mandatory. So the SF424, and I see some folks that have been around as long as me, some of you a little longer, will remember when we used to type these in by hand. You actually do the input directly into grants.gov. So this is an application, it's new. I'll be honest, this is not clear. So if you put new continuation, either one, I think this is fine for existing tribal VR programs. But anything with these red asterisks are required fields. So that all has to get filled in. What state do you live in? I'm sorry, this is the state having to review it. This is not a grant that's required. So you see, it's not, there are some grants that the state has to review. This is not one of them. But your employer tax ID number, because I am the AOR for our tribe, when I log in, the UEI automatically pops in and populates. So there are things that'll do that. So all of these forms, these standard forms, you actually go in and you input them directly into grants.gov. When I have done these workshops before, one of the things, we'll leave it unlocked. One of the things I have seen is folks that have actually completed, and I will say particularly like this budget form and complete it because it's time consuming, and then thinking you're uploading it, and then you have to turn around and input your data in all over again. So just know you're gonna, that has to be put straight into the portal. Is that making sense to everyone?
Well, I mean, like our accounting, legal, our admin requires our budget loads. And then, so it's all done by the time I go in there and then just enter the
narrative and those kinds of, yep. Yeah. Yeah, and that's where everybody's going to be different. Yeah. So there's a lobbying form. This is all, it's a basic preprint. And your folks that your AOR within your tribe is going to be a lot more familiar with these things. Um, you know, their standard form saying you're not going to do any lobbying with the federal funds, essentially, and whoever your signs off has to assure that. Um, the SF 424 supplement. So who's the project director? All of that information, new potential grantee or novice applicant. I will say some of this is new, because I will say I haven't seen this on this before. I've seen it with other grants, because they do want to know, and so this is what I will say this tells me. They want to know, is the application being written by a professional grant writer, or is it being written by someone who is from the field, essentially? So a novice grant writer. And so they're defining this. So that'll be things to pay attention to. There's no human subjects. This is not a research project. And the infrastructure programs and Build America, this is not any infrastructure project, so it's not subject to this BABA subject source. So we're non-construction grants. So it is not. This is unique to our program, so we have to be able to answer the GEPA and 427 form. This is actually new from the previous applications. So describing how your entity's existing mission, policies, or commitments ensure equitable access to and equitable participation in the proposed project or activity. So how are you ensuring equality based on your proposed project or activity, but what barriers may impede that? Based on the barriers, what steps will you take to address the barriers with access? And what's your timeline, including targeted milestones for addressing identified barriers? So this is a new component. Are there questions about this? So some of the questions, and what I will say is, what I will, because we work with individuals with disabilities and ensuring access. So tribes are not necessarily required to comply with ADA. Many tribes choose to. If there are some concerns with ADA within your program, that would probably be an area I would address. And then the issue is particularly, I would say, if your facilities are not ADA accessible, how do you work around that for your participants, as well as if there are particular language issues. I, you know, I view grant writing as is use any opportunity to be able to demonstrate how you are going to go above and beyond. And so, yes, even though you may have some barriers, in number 3, what are the steps you're going to take to do it, to address it? And I would wager anybody that's already dealing with that, you've already done it. So any questions? So don't be surprised, or don't, I'm going to say we won't have a freak out moment that there is a new form there. That everybody has to have an abstract form, and it's actually done as a one-page attachment. Anything you attach, it is imperative you upload those as PDFs. One, because they require them to be as PDFs, but two, the other thing that's problematic is even if somebody lets you slide on that, is if you upload them as documents, like Word documents, your presentation can shift with those other programs. And so what you may find, and especially if you're doing a one-page abstract and you're right at the end of one page, and you upload that as a Word doc, somebody opens it up in a different version of Word,
5 pages.
you may end up going to 2 pages, yeah, or somebody's got a different preset in their system. That's why everything that you upload in your attachments should be PDFs, because you can control the presentation. Outside of it's a requirement, so they'll ding you if you don't. It's a way to differentiate you. But the other thing is you control the presentation. And the way you could do that, any attachments, you'll hit add attachment. Where do you want to go? Go find whatever it is you want, hit it, open, and then it uploads. Your project narrative is also an upload. And that's done the same way, PDF. And then if you have optional project narrative files, I would not recommend this to be the place that you put your it's gonna come out of my mouth. That your
Like your
appendix. Yeah, I wouldn't put the appendix here. But if there are other specific files that may make sense, and again, it depends on what you're including in here. If there's documents you're referring to, very specifically, there, I don't know to what extent you may use this. Use your judgment, but I definitely would not put your appendix here. I think there's another spot for that. Your budget narrative. So same thing, starting to look the same. PDF. Your budget narrative, they don't specify how they want you to do it. There's one of two ways, and you just have to find the one that's right for you. You can either do a combined year 1 through 5 and breaking them down per cost item, or you can do year by year. Either way, your tribe or your entity may have a preference on how you do that. So you may want to think about that. If you do have contracts that you want to reference related to the budget narrative, I would add that here.
Is there like a specific format or anything?
What's that?
Like a format or like an example format for that, like a budget narrative?
For the budget narrative, I have never seen Department of Ed for RSA put out a sample. I can make a note. We can try to visit that though.
Okay, cool. I mean, I think I got one for my last one. I would just like to see some other ideas on that,
I've done them both ways. It just depends, I will say the year by year is definitely longer. So I made myself a note for us to visit that. And you'll see what I'm doing, and I'm going in, I'm leaving all the forms as open. You don't close them until they're complete. So here are some optional things. So it's identifying an evidence form. Let's explore that. So if we click on it and open it, I don't think anybody needs to fill this out. This is as it relates, so as it's talking about research citations, this is for research projects. So what citations you may want to do. I mean, if somebody has citations in their grant, that's fine, but I view this more as research projects. Does anybody else otherwise? So we'll uncheck it. There is a disclosure of lobbying activities. And although it says it's optional, I fill it out because they're going to ask it to be done. These are grants. It would be an initial award. Your name and address of the reporting entities, that kind of stuff, because it has to be completed. And so, again, the award amount you wouldn't fill in because you don't know if you're awarded. However, if there's a lobbying registrant, and again, this is stuff your tribal know, do they have registered lobbyists or anything and that kind of stuff, then that's disclosures they have to identify. If you don't, then I would put NA on the required fields. This other attachment, it's saying it's optional. That is actually where I would list, and I've got to get to it. My screen is blocked. This is where I would put the attachment of the appendixes, because it's not specifically attached to the narrative alone. Sometimes there are things you include in your appendix that are not necessarily only linked to your narrative. I think you can do it either place, just consistent on where it is. I wouldn't upload it twice, because that means somebody's going to view it twice. But I will say that is a change of adding that other section. So I don't think there's a right or wrong. I will just say my preference is to put and that's a me preference, is your other attachments in your, so it's not specifically attached with the project narrative, but that's a me preference. Any questions about the interface? Is this making sense for folks on the part of getting to the home stretch and inputting your data for upload?
This is Christopher. I just want to clarify one thing. It looked like you signed into grants.gov first. You searched for the actual grant. When you opened it, there's the apply button on the top right. And because you're already signed in, once you click that apply, you're getting into this form that you have in front of us
Yes.
now. Okay, thanks.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And the question is whoever your AOR, they may want to set it up and then giving you workspace access, or they may be fine with you setting it up and then you granting them workspace access. So then once you're done with your components, that's the conversation you'll need to have with them. Now, the other thing I will say is very nice is once everything's submitted, so if everything's done here, you lock all of this, whoever your AOR is. If I can get to the bottom, you get the option. So you see right here, there's the option that says check application, sign and submit. These will not light up till it's passed all the tests here. But there's do the opportunity for check application and then sign and submit. If you're not the AOR, this sign and submit will never light up for you. Once the application is submitted, you can actually come back and you will always find it in your workspace grants.gov. It gets archived. So if you ever need to come back, if you need to verify anything, you can then see it. So the other thing too is if you want to be able to print your entire application, you would go to the view application and you can do a request view. Everything you've uploaded and all the things you've inputted would actually upload. You'd be able to view it and being able to do a printout of everything that transmitted. Any special place, so any of the attachments, this is where you can come. Again, if you want to track who had what activity and what they did, it tracks that. And then the details. So again, if you're running into any issues and you're going, who do I contact? August Martin is the competition manager. He's the person you call. If you're having problems with grants.gov, you would contact their support. And so they have their own support line that they would do. They have frequently asked questions you can access and that kind of stuff. August's purpose is specifically as it relates to the competition or to clarify the content. Now, he can't tell you how to do it, but if you need clarification on interpretation, he should be able to answer that. As well as if you're having significant problems with grants.gov, that you have concerns about getting submission done, I would alert him to that as soon as possible. Anything else in grants.gov you guys want to visit and look at?
Angie asked about,
Oh gosh,
Um,
I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention to the chats. Y'all keep me straight now.
do we also have to sign into SAM website before going into G5? And then someone else asked if you could do the login process again.
I sure
please.
can. So all right. I can do the login process. You do not have to log into sam.gov, but you do have to make sure that your entity is registered with sam.gov and that registration is up to date. If the entity is not up to date with sams.gov, you'll get thrown out. So it's important they stay updated and renewed. And I would say there's usually somebody internally that's their job to keep that going. So sure, I can log out and get back in. Okay, so you go to grants.gov. If you're not registered, you would do the registration. So I'll click on that just so you can see. Goes through and tells you what's needed. So again, like the organizational applicant profile is the AOR. So you're not doing that, but you're doing the individual applicant profile. And you'll get registered. But otherwise you'll come to log in, and they utilize these different options to be able to get in. I do login.gov, and this is all things once you register with grants.gov, they get you set up in. I just automatically have it saved, my passwords, because it makes life easy. And then you're in. This is where it brings me every time. Now, remember, I already opened to say I was applying. So then we'll come to manage workspaces. I don't have to reopen and say I'm starting a new one. This is within the time period. I'm just going to hit search of what I'm attached to. And we're going to go to, this is the vocational rehabilitation, and we're managing that one. And you're back in.
What if you don't have the managed workspace set up yet? I can't remember.
So the question is who does, so if your AOR wants you to open and set up the application, or do they want to do it? That's the question you'll need to find out. If they're doing it, they have to add you as a participant. If you're doing it, then I would assume they're going to have you add them as a participant. So if you do the application, and I'll go back. Then you would find, so again, let's search for the grant. And if you know the number, if you know the CFDA number, you can put that straight in. Watch, I'll pop that in. 84.250Q. It'll find it that way as well. Oh, what are you doing? You're not finding the CFDA number. I wonder if the Q is problem. There it is. Didn't need the Q. Then we can find it that way. And if nobody's applied and whoever's doing it, then this is where you would apply. But at some point, the AOR has to get connected to it, whether they're creating it or you're creating it, somewhere they have to get connected to it. Did we get accustomed to certain ones? I don't like some of these newer fields. So the other thing, you can come in, you can track applications. So once you know, you get assigned numbers, grant numbers, you can come in and see, you'll get the information, you can plug it in, see where it's at. And again, I always just hit search and it pulls the active ones that I'm either working on or we're in the waiting on decisions. Anything else? Not sure I set up manage workspace yet or any other forms that use it. So the signature is whoever your authorized official is. It's the project. It's not typically the project director. Usually, I would assume for you guys with the Alaskan Village Corporation. So Angie's asking on the forms, um, who the signatures, and that is typically going to be. Well, Board, can we submit just a resolution? So your resolution is signed by everyone in the consortia, Amanda?
No, just the secretary. And there's a stamp, but it's the full support of the executive board, which includes delegates from every sub-region.
That's a question for August more than I can. I would hate to tell you, yes, that's sufficient, and then they're like, nope, that you got to get something different. The nuances, particularly for you guys in Alaska, are going to be a little out of, I would say, my scope.
Darn.
No, but I think that's easily something August can answer. Very
I
simple.
mean, 5 years ago, I did both. I had a
Gotcha.
resolution and then, but I didn't get all 37 tribes. I was close.
Hmm.
It's very time consuming.
No, absolutely.
Now Angie says they have a perpetual resolution.
Yeah,
And
I
Angie,
can't speak.
you're in
Yeah.
consortium tribes.
Yeah, I can't speak to that to that extent. And so what they're asking about is for consortia of tribes is and then we can actually look in the I'm gonna switch screens on you guys. Give me a second. I'm gonna go to the actual grant application and we can do a look for it. Let's see. Okay. So I want to look for, so I want to find text. So I want to say anywhere it says consortia. Or related words. Okay. So eligible applicants may be made only by Indian tribes or consortia of those tribes located on federal and state reservations, definitions. That's not the section. Indirect cost rate, not that section. So the benefit of having this electronic, do you see how easy it is to do word searches? Wonderful to be able to do that. So it helps in being able to of like, where is that? Because this whole document is 80 somewhat pages. The whole, this nice little thing that you've been snuggling up in bed with every night, that puts you to sleep, I'm sure, in 10 seconds flat. Is it can be a bit daunting of looking for something very specific. So having the nice search ability is helpful. So previously funded tribes are entitled to receive 5 additional competitive preference points. So that's just same for consortia. Okay, that just reiterates eligibility, indirect costs. There are some things it repeats. So if we're not finding it there, then we need to look for resolution. Saying it doesn't have a resolution. It requires a resolution.
Or maybe support for?
Let's see if it was being persnickety.
What page is
Okay,
that?
this is the part talking about the consortium. This is on page. Of course, it doesn't tell me. It's where they're defining reservation.
On the side, it says 14 out of 74 of your screen.
There you go. Yeah, thank you, Mary.
Thanks, got it.
It's actually top of page 15. So to receive an AIVR grant, a tribal organization that is not a governing body of an Indian tribe must have one of its functions, the vocational rehabilitation of American Indians with disabilities, and two, have the approval of the tribe to be served by such organization. If the grant is made to the governing body of an Indian tribe, either on its own behalf or on behalf of a consortium, or to a tribal organization to perform services benefiting more than one Indian tribe, the approval of each such Indian tribe is a prerequisite to the making of such a grant.
Well, how's Angie getting away with it?
Well, that's the question of that may be something that's just nuanced, because again, like, is it, so if it's saying in perpetuity that they're authorizing the submission of all grants on behalf of the entirety in perpetuity and they're all signing it, that may take care of it then and there. That's where I say I read what this says here, but it becomes the nuances within your organizations. Sorry, Amanda, I didn't mean to make your life more
So is that stating that each tribe in the region must provide a resolution for the grant application?
share the screen again. So it doesn't specifically say, let's see. It just says the approval of each such Indian tribe is a prerequisite to the making of such a grant. And I know, like, for our tribe, there's only 3 ways they take action: resolution, motion, or ordinances. That's the 3 ways they can take action. That's allotted to them in our governing documents.
This is Christopher.
Christopher's going, this is also
Yeah, so
complex.
yeah, this is interesting because it specifically says benefiting more than one Indian tribe. However, if that particular consortium wants to provide services to any Alaskan Native or American Indian, and not necessarily say it's benefiting a specific tribe or group of tribes, is that a workaround? Is that making sense how I'm asking? I'm not sure if I'm asking it right.
Well, I mean, the whole structure in Alaska is so very different than the lower
Yeah.
48. That's where I just would not want to get caught up. And that's where I would say August is uniquely positioned to answer that much quicker than we can, because
So
he's
I
from
can-
Alaska.
So I can ask August that question.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. That is
that would
something
make
he should be
sense.
able to answer and not give you a bureaucratic response.
Because was it 2014 when Alaska held up the entire grant competition because of the language as to whether or not we were consortias or only tribal entities were allowed to apply for this grant.
It was the whole conversations about whether consortias were even eligible, I think, was the
And they
whole
finally
issue.
deemed us eligible based on the Alaska Native Settlement Claims Act.
Yep.
And that's
And I
part of
think
my,
it became into some of where this language falls in of
Yeah.
how they may have done the workaround.
okay. Oh, yeah, number 1. The governing body of an Indian tribe, either on behalf of the tribe or on behalf of the consortia. Ugh.
So I'll give you, for example, there's a consortia in Louisiana, but the consortia is led by one tribe. So that one tribe acts on behalf of the other tribes in the consortia, and they give their consent to be able to participate. But
Okay.
y'all are uniquely situated because the Alaskan corporations are not tribes. They're woohoo, good times.
I'll get right on that email.
Yep.
Hey, Amanda, when you get an answer, please, dear God, I hope you get an answer quickly.
Let us know.
Yeah, could you put it on
Report
the
back next
121?
week.
Yeah. Even though it doesn't affect me, I'll be really interested in seeing the answer.
Should I just send it to August or should I CC Corinne?
At this point, I would send it to August.
Because aren't they still working from home? And you
I
never
think
know
they've
who's
all
on
been
vacation, who isn't. Remember, I don't have a project officer anymore, technically.
really. Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I don't know. I might disagree. If it's pretty critical, I'd be CCing Corinne. So
I would say if I wouldn't get an answer back real quick, I sure would be. Okay, so the other thing I want to do, I'm going to share my screen, is components of the grant. So this was, we submitted in 2021. This is our table of contents. For me, I like to contemplate every page and being able to account for it for the reader, so that if I'm making references to specific areas and that kind of stuff, particularly as it relates to the program narrative and the budget narrative, I don't want them to be confused on what numbers I'm sending them to. So I sequentially number my pages. It takes a little more effort, but I think it's much cleaner, and as well as my appendices to flow from that, to be able to make sure as I'm citing things in my various narratives, I'm pointing people to the right place. We have to remember that peer reviewers are looking at multiple grants and they're going to become fatigued. So the more they have to dig and look for whatever it is you're trying to send them to look at, they may not do it. Or if it's frustrating, you don't want that to account for your score. You want it to be as simple and easy for the reader as possible. So that's something I account for in the table of contents, in being able to make that flow. So I try to account for every page of the preprints of all the SF-424 forms, the lobbying forms, and that kind of stuff. Although I can't number them, I assign numbers to them for myself of where they may flow. Part 2 is the program narrative, and as you can see, and I'm going to switch over. Gosh, I wish I could do a split screen. I'm going to switch back to grants.gov. You see the flow of the preprint into your project narrative, your budget narrative, and that is why I like to put my appendices so that it always will populate last. Does that make sense to folks?
Are you comfortable sharing some of that? Like on the 121 listserv maybe, or
My table of contents?
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I also break down the program narrative. So then again, as folks are trying to identify and find the sections, I want to make it as easy as possible for them to get to it. The special applications requirements, where are you going look for it? The GEPRA assurance. Now that was different. We had to do in the past a 1-page. So you see in the new one, there is a separate form for that. My narrative. So for me, I separate the federal and the non-federal as 2 separate ones. In this cycle, I lump them as 5-year blocks. And then in my appendices is the items that I included. So quality of the management plan, the Gantt charts. I just prefer to put it in the appendix because it just makes easy reference there. Some people put it in the narrative. There's no hard and fast rule of where it needs to be. This is just my preference. Our tribal resolution, our state recognition verification. One of the things is for folks is the issue of verifying your reservation boundaries and that kind of stuff. For us, we are a state designated statistical service area. Louisiana doesn't take land into trust for state tribes. And so we have a statistical census area that's identified that actually meets the definition. So that's how we identify it. However, for you guys that are federally recognized tribes, you actually have some other tools that are available to you that you can pull from through the BIA, where they'll have the listing of your federal tribes and those kinds of things, and the list of reservations. And again, those are things we can deep dive on a little bit more later. The verification of competitive preference priority. Is everybody on the call existing programs? So everybody gets 5 points, but you've got to make sure you address it. So one of the things I do, so you see on page 13, I have a 1-page that just says, we are previously funded. I cite my grant award numbers from whatever periods, and then I'll include in here copies of our GANs from previous years. So it satisfies the requirements. So again, somebody doesn't have to go dig it up to be able to verify. Our collaborative agreement with the state, our staff resumes, job descriptions. Staff resumes, I don't put everybody's resumes. I put myself, I put the counselors. We used to put everybody's resumes, and one of the things, and we'd list everybody's job descriptions, and it just became a bit overwhelming. Because part of it too is the confusion of who is your essential staff that has to be identified on your GAN, or that RSA has to have approval. So although I list our counselors, and that's to our benefit, at the point in time when we wrote this grant, I had 2 counselors that had been with us. One had been with us 20, going on 21 years, and the other had been with us 5. So I definitely want to talk about their experience in being able to administer the program and being able to do that. However, I clearly identified that the only essential staff is the director. So that there's no misunderstanding of who RSA can approve on. Would we count 2024 to 2029 as the 5-year grant cycle? Tell me what you mean. Oh, Christopher, so technically 2025 to 2029. The federal fiscal year is always the tail end of your project year. Correct, Christopher? So this year
Right, so-
we're in federal fiscal year 24.
Right now, we're in federal fiscal year 24, and October 1 will
October
start
1,
federal fiscal
25.
year 25. Right.
Yep.
So the grant
Yep.
goes from 25 to 29.
Right. And I may have pulled the wrong one here, so I'm not sure.
So yours is correct when I'm looking at, because see, it's, 21, when you're looking there at part 3, 21 to 25, looks like it, to the average reader, it looks like it's a 4-year period, but it's not, because it's 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. That's 5 years.
Yeah.
So with us, it'll start on 25 and you go, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So that's 5
Yep.
years.
Yep. The other thing too is the letters of support and partnership. Our first cycle out, we probably had like 20 letters of support, and which was all like, wow, wonderful. We've really moved more towards the quality of the letters of support versus the quantity. And where there is significant contribution to that extent. Any questions? And this is not technically like a requirement of RSA. This is just my preference. But there are things that some of these things, like you've got to have, because for most tribes, that's how they give their approval, is through resolution. You have to be able to identify your area so that those are those documents. So, and if you've got a collaborative agreement, typically you need to refer to it. There needs to be some resumes, job descriptions. Those are common things you're going to see in every application. Does anybody do anything different that they want to share? Okay, so Elena, you're asking, you're still stuck on how to get on SAMS.gov? I can show you Sam. So you need never get, none of you need ever get into SAMS.gov. I'm gonna go pull this up.
I think what I'm trying to do is get it registered and I'm stuck.
So does your,
Um,
what group are you with? What tribe are you with?
I'm with Siston Wapton, so
They should already be on SAM.gov if they're receiving federal money.
okay. So don't even worry with Sam's.
The
But
biggest
I
thing, so
guess
like we can come here and we can do a search, SISSITON. Am I spelling that correctly?
SISSETON. Yeah, I looked that up too and I didn't see it.
I'm just to do that. Let's see what pops up. Oh, well, look at that. There's another way you can do this. So,
But I
let's do
am on this. I guess I just didn't. So Chris, you're saying it's just a
spell it
system of
for me.
words. Sissemowahton. WAH.
Yep.
WAHPETON. Oyate. OYATE.
So we're not going to do an exact phrase because then
Oh,
we're going
okay.
to get we're going to get into some complex things here.
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like, I'm assuming these are businesses that the tribe owns, a motor grader,
Yeah.
sand spreader, on healthcare, single, uh, institutional receipt, tribal college, equity. So it also lists all your grants and that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I seen this then. Okay, so I must been on the right page. But I thought I may have needed to do more, but I got everything else done then.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
as long as, but that you can verify that with your tribe and that kind
Okay.
of stuff. If you know to, I think there's another way to search by the unique identifier. That's what I was trying to find.
Yeah, I might have to ask my boss about that, but no, okay. So I must be good. I registered on
mhm.
grants.gov.
Yeah, no, typically none of you are ever going to do the SAM.gov
Oh,
thing.
okay. That's
That's
what
going
I
to be
was
done
wondering.
by administration above you. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, no. Very rare any of you guys are going to do that. Yeah. Let's see, this was after the full board and then only 14. And they were funded. Okay. Everybody still with us? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to actually pull up the grant announcement. Yep. So let's get the application packet. This is the meat and potatoes of everything we have to answer. And again, it's this great tool, right? It's wonderful. That's supposed to answer all the questions and put everything in order for us all. So it goes through a lot of the specific requirements, has the dear applicant letter, the notice that for new awards, what the selection criteria is, special application requirements, the transmittal instructions, abstract instructions. So this will help point you to the different sections and being able to do that. But remember, being able to do that word search is also really helpful. So see here, find text or tools. So let's jump to the dear applicant letter. There are going to be some little jewels in here. So RSA has had this pre-application webinar. I think it's on the Avertech website. Is that correct, guys? If you want to go back to watch it, they're not going to give a ton of information or like helpful hints. Oh, do this or that. They are obligated to go through. Here's what the requirements are. They can't, they have to be very conscious of not having favoritism in any way, shape, or form because they're managing the competition. So the grants.gov application submission, we went through that. The SAM's registration, if your tribe is currently receiving receiving federal funds, you're registered in SAM's. I wouldn't overly worry about that. Somebody internally within your tribe should be doing that. Goes through the budget information. So cost share, required cost sharing or matching and waiver request, mandatory non-federal share. A cost share is 10% of the total cost of the project. Cost share may be provided in cash or in kind. And so it doesn't all have to be cash provided by your entity. It can be donated services or reduced cost on particular things that are offered to your program. And the federal share is 90% of the total cost. So the 90 and the 10 equal the 100%. So your 10% is not 10% of the 90%. It's 10% of the 100%. Last grant cycle, tons of folks miscalculated match because they did 10% of the 90% of federal. Is that making sense to folks?
So question then, with the 10% in every year that we do our reporting, that 10% cost is in there. So each year, I don't know, help me if I'm saying this right, but each year we will be implementing that 10%. Or is it just the total? Yeah, okay. I think I get what you're saying.
I'm trying to see if there's some tools. That's what I'm looking for.
'Cause I know in my reporting, I've always added that 10% in there. And then our bookkeeper figured it out.
So let's see. I will look because that's actually what I want to do. Gosh, I'm gonna find this so we can do and pull because it gets complex and of course we are all people. You know, we excel. Christopher's laughing. We are people, Christopher. We excel at what we do because we love people, not necessarily that we love crunching numbers. And so if
Speak for yourself.
well, I know you love numbers, and I'm good. I'm all right with numbers. However, the reality is the vast majority of people who work in the helping field are not great mathematicians. So, and especially if you're a novice writer and that kind of stuff, this is a interesting concept to be able to nail down. Because the other thing is as you increase certain amounts, that 100% keeps juggling. So it gets interesting. So that's an area we're going to work on to make sure and hone in. We'll do that when we talk budgets to make sure that your match is calculated correctly. But I wanted to make sure we talked about that. Indirect cost information, they use unrestricted indirect cost rates. Most folks are going to have a negotiated indirect cost rate by a cognizant agency. They do ask for a copy of that. So that'll be something that will be in your appendices. Special applications requirement. We have to address, and this is the 371.21A through K. And so again, it talks about the application not being complete without the assurances inserted into the special applications requirement. Competitive preference priority. This is at the whole sole discretion of the commissioner. And so in the past it has fluctuated. It used to be 10%. It's 5. It's been consistently 5 for a number of years now. 5 additional competitive points if you've operated a program before. So it gives you those pieces, the notices for inviting award. So again, this is Q. So when we hear RSA talk about what letter, folks that are awarded under this grant cycle are Q recipients. The notice went out on December the 7th, excuse me, and the deadline for transmission is March 26th. It's also by a specific time. So that's the other pieces we want to find the section where it talks about what time. And I don't see it here, but it may be in the actual Federal Register. So if you give me a second.
I thought I just highlighted something that said 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Always Eastern Standard Time because that's where they are. But for whatever reason, I thought when I saw this notice, it was earlier. So that's what I want to find.
I think that was for the APR. Pretty sure this one is 11:59 p.m.
So is it 4:59 p.m.? That doesn't sound right because that's, I mean, that means
We'll run
Alaska-
into it because I know I saw it. So that's the part we want to make sure because you definitely want to pay attention to the time and the time zone because we cross multiple time zones. So that's going to be important. Understand the 10% better. Oh, wonderful, Christopher. Yes, if you can share the 10%, that'll be great. Washington, D.C. time. If I missed something, y'all, in the chat, feel free to interrupt. This is about us having conversation, so I don't want to overlook anybody. And also feel free to interrupt me. You can. We're okay with that. Let's see. So funding, purpose of funding. So it talks about services, priorities. Again, it reiterates the competitive preference, 5 points. This is new language, this priority, because they are saying continuation of previously funded tribal programs. They've been a bit firmer in that. They didn't state this so clearly in the past. We are discretionary grants. That has not changed, unfortunately. So they have 28.5 million essentially for this award cycle. The estimated range of the awards are anywhere from 300,000 to 1 million, with the average size being about 550,000. Does that mean everybody writes for 550,000? No, you ask for what you need and what you foresee as specific needs that you can justify for your community. Can I explain discretionary? Discretionary funds, thank you, Elena, for the question. Discretionary funds or funds that are not statutorily required to the extent the way state funding is for voc rehab. So state funding are permanent funded programs. There is funding for those programs no matter what. We are discretionary, which means we're a set aside. The commissioner could decide I'm not funding discretionary programs and wipe it out. We have tried in as many ways as possible on the advocacy end through CANAR to advocate and lock in within that discretionary that the commissioner can do between 1 and 1.5. So our fondest hope is that they will never go below 1% of a set aside for the state agencies. But there have been other discretionary programs that were previously funded by Rehabilitation Services Administration that have disappeared. And so those are the dangers of discretionary programs, is they don't hold the same teeth and permanency. Christopher, I don't know if you have a different take or definition on discretionary. Okay, I'm going to assume he doesn't.
Sorry, I physically did a thumbs up for you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. So they're 5-year grants, 5-year grant cycles typically, and they're estimating to award 44. They do hold in that they're not bound by any estimates in this notice because it's an estimation of the award availability. Who are eligible applicants. If you're currently an eligible applicant, you will continue to be an eligible applicant. So won't hugely deep dive in that. We've gone into the section, consortiums. Yes, Amanda, please keep us updated on that. Cost sharing. Christopher, if you get that tool, great. If not, we'll look for it and we'll cover it in budget information, indirect costs, administrative cost limitation. This program does not include any program-specific limitation on administrative expenses, but your administrative expenses must be reasonable and necessary and conform to the cost principles defined in the uniform guidance, which means it's got to be reasonable, it's got to be allocable, it's got to, we can't say that 90% of the budget is spent on administrative costs. Somebody's going to go, what? That doesn't make any sense. But there are some programs out there that limit and significantly limit. One of the other grant programs I work with here through the Veterans Administration, in fact, is that the administrative portion of the grant can only be, it can't be any more than 15%. So it's very restrictive, and then they're very specific in defining what's included in that. So that'll vary. We're also a very human intensive program, which is why I think Department of Ed leaves that a bit open-ended, because of the amount of time and the attention individuals with disabilities need is different than a lot of other programs. Subgrantees, so they're very clear, and this is consistent. There's no change. A grantee under this competition cannot award subgrants to entities to directly carry out project activities described in its application. So although they're not permitted, you are able to provide VR services by contract or otherwise enter into an agreement with a DSU, so the designated state unit, a community rehab program, or another agency to assist in the implementation of the program, as long as such contract, so being clear, it's a contract or agreement, is identified in your application. Okay. So then it goes through the application submission. So hopefully this is where I'm hoping it's going to identify the time so we can nail that out. So it does have some guidance here for anyone that's looking to consolidate with 477. It has to be in a separate 477 plan made to the Department of the Interior. Whoop, I can get my thing. And then it talks about grantees who are in their last year of funding from a previous grant and currently integrated the previous grant under an approved 477, you still have to reapply for a new grant. So although someone may be incorporated under 477, they still have to apply on 5-year cycles and meet all of the requirements that are included in the notice. Let's see, funding restrictions, there's nothing there. So the selection criteria goes through those sections, and we'll hit on, I think we're running tight on time. What I'm trying to find at this point is the time of submission. And then we can pick up next time on these components. That's what I'm trying to. That's so odd it's not here.
Oh, I saw it.
I mean, that is so odd. Because normally it's repeated multiple times.
Yeah, I
This is
skimmed through
why,
every page and don't see a time.
look, this is why you sleep with this stuff.
I know I remember seeing a time at one point and it was early. It was more like at 4 or 3 o'clock.
That's what I recalled as well.
Yeah, it was earlier.
It's not even in the Federal Registry.
No, it's not, because I
Just says
checked that as well.
deadline for transmittal of applications, March 26th, 2024.
And what we don't want to happen is that to be something that trips people up. Okay, I don't want to go through the selection.
It might be in the, there was a PowerPoint that went with did anyone watch the video?
Okay, let's look at the application transmittal
is.
instructions, because I'm thinking that's where it's going to be right here. Talks about workspace, Adobe Forms, PDF files. Let's see. Submit
Does
early.
did anyone, who sent this? I can't remember. It's a reminder on page 23 of this
Okay.
PowerPoint. The application deadline is 11:59:59 p.m. Eastern time on the application deadline date.
So if you see right here, yep, that's where I just found it. So on this is page 46, number 2, submit early. We strongly recommend that you do not wait until the last day to submit your application. Grants.gov will put a date timestamp on your application and then process it after it is fully uploaded. The time it takes to upload an application will vary depending on the number of factors, including the size of the application, the speed of your internet connection, and the time it takes grants.gov to process the application, because it also depends who else is online and the firing. If you've got fast internet, it's pretty quick for the most part. If you have slow internet, I would not chance that. If grants.gov rejects your application, you need to resubmit successfully to grants.gov before 11:59:59 p.m. Eastern time. So now we've got that. So it's got to transmit at least a second before midnight Eastern time on March 26th. I would not want to be anyone trying to do this at this time. I have been there before. It's no fun. I have assisted other programs that were having trouble with grants.gov trying to get it done in That it's not fun.
So I have to have my grant done almost 2 weeks in advance
Mhm.
because it has to be routed for review. And now by legal, accounting, and the chief chairman. I mean,
Yeah.
my boss has to, so we actually have a system in place where I'm gonna be uploading like just the narrative. You know, it's not as complicated as G5. And the
Yeah.
budget, all PDF into our computer system, and then it goes through kind of like our time cards, how our time cards are approved.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. And so that's something to just also to be aware of. What I will say is in the past, if folks were having trouble with grants.gov, they would make exceptions that you could send it in paper form. That has been gone long time.
mhm.
There is no other option but to submit through grants.gov. Now, if you make a mistake and you forgot to upload something and you've done it before the deadline, you can submit again and it will override the old application.
Oh, that's good.
So if you do have a correction, you can do it. It just one will override the other. Look, unless grants.gov has changed anything in their system, that's how it used to work.
Then Christopher mentions about attachments being less than 5 megabytes.
Yes.
And I believe it tells you when you upload your PDF.
If it's too big, it won't upload.
Exactly. It'll kick it out. And then
Yep.
I think what
And then you've
you
got to
could
figure
do
out how to
is-
condense.
Right.
Yep.
You could make your, because when you attach, you can attach multiple. It's not just one big attachment, correct? What, like the appendix? I can't remember.
I like to attach mine as one big document so that it's a seamless single
Right, but
document.
if it's
My
too
attachment.
big, I don't know.
Let's see. Let me see. Let me share my screen.
Plus,
real
part of the
Yeah,
deal with
Andy
being a
says flat.
PDF, I mean, everything you already mentioned, the reason why they would want PDF, but that is another one of them. So if you submit something in a Word document, that's going to actually hold more memory space than a PDF of the same
Mhm.
thing.
I mean, it's got to be a pretty big, let's see if I can switch over. Are y'all seeing my grants.gov page? Okay.
Yes.
Um, I was looking to see if it lets you attach multiples or you can only do one. Okay, so you can, it looks like you can do more than one. So you can do here a single one and then others.
Just in case.
Yeah. Any questions on any of this? I want to be cognizant of folks' time. And then we'll pick up next week, same time, same channel, actually the same link as well. And I'll post it again for folks.
I hope you don't mind. I just submitted or shared, uploaded the Avers pre-application PowerPoint.
Nope, no problem at all.
And that's where page 23 has the exact deadline time.
Okay. So my question for next week is, do we want to deep dive on budget information or the narrative criteria? I leave that up to you guys on what your preference is and what you feel like. I see budget. Okay. So budget, do we want to deep dive on budget? Budget, please. Okay. So we'll do budget, and then depending on where we are time-wise and that kind of stuff, but we'll make sure we do budget, talking about cost share, and that kind of stuff and breaking that down. Good deal. So that'll be priority next week. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lenore.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.